right, this is Cleopatra, the daughter of the Nile by Kristiana Gregory. And today is part 8. We are starting with page 80, which is the 15th of Maius in Rome. Father says that when in Rome, it's good politics to do as the Romans do. Thus, we're all dressed in togas. They're heavy, itchy things because the linen cloth also contains wool. And the sandals, oh, what discomfort. The thick leather straps cut into my feet. I want to record as many events and sights of Rome as possible so that when I return to Egypt, I will not forget. Also, Olympus and Theophilus will ask every detail of me. I know them. So I begin. Many of the Romans have sundials in their courtyards. They also use water clocks so they can tell time indoors and when the clouds hide the sun. We have these in Alexandria, but I said nothing, not wanting to insult the official who proudly showed us around. I prefer my hourglass in any event. We've been staying at the villa of Tullus Atticus, a wealthy citizen who wants to help Father reclaim his throne. Atticus is a stout, bald man, pleasant enough, but he appears bloated as one who has given to gluttony. The tips of his fingers are stained purple from eating so many grapes, which he does while being read to. His reader has the deep, cultured voice of an actor, so pleasant that whenever they're in the courtyard together, I sit nearby and listen. His villa is near that stinking river I mentioned earlier, but the rooms wrap around courtyards that are lovely with flowering fruit trees and fish ponds and fountains. An atrium with an opening to the sky brings light into the entryway. A pool in the center catches the rain. Thus, there's fresh water for the many cats and puppies running about. The bath in my private suite is similar to home, hot water provided by an underground fire. Walls inside the villa are brightly painted in blue, green, and yellow. There are also murals with scenes of the countryside, family members, and the like. Pedestals throughout the halls display marble busts of dead relatives. A servant explained to me that Atticus is comforted in his sorrow over the loss of his sister, his father, and an infant daughter by being able to gaze on their faces. A sculptor comes every year to carve the images of his children and good friends. I think in my heart that Egyptian mummies are not nearly so beautiful or lifelike as these. Flowers are decorated with mosaics. One in the country depicts a guard dog with snarling, sharp teeth and the word beware written in Latin. Perhaps this is wishful thinking on the part of Atticus because I have not seen his dog do anything except wag its tail and take long naps in the shade. Atticus also has many stables. Oh, I do love the smell of hay and horses, but so do the flies, untold numbers of them. Servants follow us everywhere we go, waving peacock feathers to keep the insects away from our skin. At night when we sleep, we're protected by silk bed hangings. Another way the Romans catch bugs is with long strips of paper that are coated with a mixture of honey and resin. These hang from the ceilings so that flying insects bump into them and stick. It's not a pleasant sight or smell. Dead bugs stink the same as dead rats. Yesterday, Father and I toured the city by city in chairs, as no carriages are allowed in the streets during daylight. They're too teeny. We were each carried by 4 Hebrew slaves who'd been captured in Jerusalem by Pompey. I tried not to eavesdrop, but I could hear them talking amongst themselves. They spoke longingly of the hope they have in their God, who one day will free them from captivity. Perhaps I didn't realize an Egyptian princess can understand their language. My Jewish friend Theophilus taught me well. Like Alexandria, Rome is surrounded by a thick stone wall built more than 300 years ago. The city itself is full of cramped apartments built one on top of the other with several families living in each one. Shops are on the ground floor. There are Senate offices wedged next door to tenements, which are next door to marble temples. Such disorder. And graffiti stains every wall. Some are lines of poetry written in Latin as well as Greek. Some are election notices. I saw names of gladiators, even faded notes about the great Spartacus. But much of the writings are vulgar. Oh, the crude thoughts of man. How could an imperial city allow such squalor? In my opinion, the Romans have spent entirely too much effort conquering the world when they should sweep their own front step. We've not met Julius Caesar. I thought he'd be on the docks when our ships arrived in Ostia ready to receive us, but he's up north building catapults and battering rams to conquer more of Gaul or possibly Britannia. People here are vague. They don't really know. But we did meet Pompey the Great. That's a story. Let's dig into that one. 16th of Maius. Our third night here, Atticus held a banquet in our honor. Neva helped me dress in a fresh white toga with a sachet of myrrh tucked next to my skin. She painted my toenails blue, then fastened delicate gold chains with tiny bells around my ankles. I wore a crown of henna blossoms, my hair brushed straight to my shoulders, my eyelids painted blue. I wanted to appear royal, but not cheap like Berenice. Neva held up my mirror for one last look, then we walked outside. We followed a path lit by tiny oil lamps that had been placed in the dirt alongside the stones. When we passed the kitchen, I saw a long fire pit where several wild boars were roasting on spits. Other meats were turning, also duck and small fowl. The banquet hall has a grand room that opens onto gardens, reminding me of home. Couches had been arranged around low tables so that three of us could recline together while eating. Pillows and covers are in the same colorful fabrics we have in Alexandria. I suppose because we trade with the same countries. I leaned into one of the cushions and tucked my feet under my dress. As soon as I did, a serving girl appeared. She set before me a simmering dish of small roasted songbirds, arranged quite beautifully with asparagus tips and spotted quail eggs cooked in their shells. Red grapes were piled in the center of the table like Mount Vesuvius, surrounded with plates of figs and large green olives, so much to eat. As bowls and platters were moved about, I noticed the tablecloth was stained from many meals past, crusted with dry foods and vomit. In my royal opinion, it was a disgusting way to offer a meal, but I said nothing. Eventually, slaves brought to father and me flasks of water to pour over our fingers so we could wash between bites, while someone held a bowl under our hands to catch the drippings. I was grateful for this because the little birds were greasy, and I didn't want to wipe off my fingers on my soiled tablecloth or in my hair, like I saw several senators doing. Father seemed startled when soldiers in helmets and red plumes marched into the room with trumpets. After they played a few piercing notes, General Pompey himself strode in, a red cloak draped over his shoulder like Alexander the Great, and thick armbands. He touched the handle of his sword and looked around the room as if he were in a hurry to go someplace else. When his hard eyes fell on me, I began to shake inside. But I knew I must at least pretend to be brave. I held my head high, and I could feel my pearl earrings brush my neck as I turned to face him. As princess, I'll never bow or curtsy to a barbarian, though Neva at my side did so. Puso stood behind me. I could hear his breathing as a clink of one of his bracelets as it touched his own sword, ready to defend me. Well then, Pompey shouted, clasping his hands over his head. Dancing girls appeared. They wore billowy silk, and on the ends of their fingers were tiny brass cymbals. The dancers swayed to the music of tambourines and African drums. In between the tables, a family of pygmies did somersaults. They wore brightly colored harnesses with bells. I felt in my heart that everything was far too loud, too wild to continue. As our meal began, Pompey walked over to our table, smiling broadly. When father stood to greet him, Pompey clasped both his arms and began speaking rapidly in Latin. Father didn't understand one word, but I surely did. King Eleutes, the general said, we finally meet you, gorilla face. Indeed, you are a half-baked and decrepit, drunk with a nose like a plum. Did our trumpets wake you from your nap, you lazy dullard? Dropping father's arms, he turned to where I reclined. Ah, little child, he smiled. Oh, Isis, I can't repeat what Pompey said to me, but the words were as rude and hurtful as the fishermen who'd come alongside our ship in the harbor. His words were graffiti on my heart. Slowly, I stood up and looked around me. The soldiers were grinning with pleasure at their leader's clever trick. I thought in my heart I must be brave and strong, like Queen Esther and the Queen of Sheba, who in their day spoke before the most powerful men on earth. Sir, I began in Latin. I'm Cleopatra, Princess of the Nile, third daughter of the king and pharaoh of Egypt, the man you just so cruelly insulted. At first I was so nervous, my voice trembled. The Latin words felt awkward on my tongue, but soon I was speaking with confidence. Quite well, it seems, because the look on Pompey's face was one of shock. His soldier smiles dropped like dead flies. I began to relax. Bless Father. His pale expression had changed to delight and admiration for me. He hadn't understood my words, but he understood my tone. General Pompey, I continued, we come before you humbly to ask for your help, but not as fools. If this evening is sport for you and your baboons to mock the royal family of Egypt, with whom your country has traded precious items for years, just say so. We'll return to Alexandria and immediately and burden you no longer. Oh, I could have gone on and on, but I stopped myself, remembering something Olympus would say when I talk too much. The more words, the less meaning. And how does that profit anyone? My heart was pounding so furiously. I wanted to stomp out of the banquet hall, but that would have been the temper of a 12-year-old girl, not the noble response of a princess. As I put my thoughts to what I should do now, Pompey looked directly at me. No, indeed, Your Highness, he said in a voice soft enough that only I could hear him. You're no fool. Come, let's sup. Thank the gods I was spared further embarrassment. But as for Father, a different story. I think I can get a little bit more done. The 19th of Maius. Of course, the banquet made Father merry. Even though Romans dilute their wine with water, he still drank too much. He brought out his pipes, which had been tied to the sash of his robe. Someone's got to take those away from him. He played, he sang, he danced. He showed his good manners by belching as loud and often as Pompey. When slaves began to snuff out the torches to signify the evening was ending, I was pleased no one had further mocked my father. In my heart, I know they wanted to, but they silenced their jokes, knowing that their language was understood by the Princess of the Nile. Also in my heart, I thanked Olympus for teaching me Latin, and I thanked Neva for helping me practice during our long ocean voyage. Back in my chamber, I undressed and bathed while Neva read one of Cicero's speeches to me. Cicero was a famous lawyer here in Rome, but he's in exile now. When the last grains of sand in my hourglass had dribbled through, I went to bed. I lay awake for hours, it seemed. Neva on the floor mat next to me and Puso sleeping in the doorway. I could hear the fountain outside my window and the sweet song of a night bird. The wool blanket itched through my cotton tunic, but it was warm at least. I pulled it up over my bare shoulders. A small lamp burning with olive oil flickered in the corner. The smell is unlike the sweet fragrances of home. I want to go home, I cried silently. I wish I had my island palace in which to hide. Hot tears soaked the pillow under my cheek. Standing up to the barbarian Pompey may have seemed natural to those watching, but it left me in pieces inside. He's one of the most fearful, dangerous men in the world. 3 years ago, he, Julius Caesar, and a rich politician named Crassus seized control of the Roman government. They call themselves the Triumvirate. Woe to Father. Tonight I learned he's not respected at all by anyone. This is why I want to go home. My life isn't safe here with the Romans who laugh at King Ptolemy. It'd be easy for them and probably would give them great pleasure to feed the two of us to the lions. Then they could invade Alexandria and do away with my sisters and my brothers and add Egypt to their empire. At this moment, my heart is filled with rage at Father because he's not my protector. He's more a fool than I ever realized. Olympus says knowledge is the way to wisdom, but he didn't tell me that wisdom hurts the heart. To continue. A few days ago, a ship arrived in Puteoli, the port south of Ostia, having sailed from Alexandria in a record-breaking 12 days. When I heard that a courier from this ship was racing on horseback to Rome, 100 miles, I knew in my heart that they were messages for us. I ran from the villa down a path to the road. The courier handed me a parcel, somewhat moist from its sea voyage, but dry inside. Letters, 6 for Father and 2 for me. I broke open the seal on one of mine and read hungrily. Olympus, friend, loyal companion, and student of medicine in Alexandria. 2, Princess Cleopatra in Rome. Friend much missed. Good news. come home. His message was shorter than his greeting and mysterious. What does he mean? I tucked the other letter in my toga to read later, for at that moment, I heard shouts coming from Father's chamber. So that's where I'm going to leave off for today. Thank you.